Welcome to the Solar Guitar Studio home tour. Today I'm sporting my Guitar Pit t-shirt. Chris's channel is a lot of fun, you should check him out. So I'm going to start the tour by demonstrating how quiet this room can be when nothing's on. And I'll take a look around. The Surface Pro 4 is the computer I use. And then I really want to show off this entire rack with some amplifiers on there and how everything is. I better flip this around. How everything is combined front and back. There's a two-sided rack with, alright, at the bottom of this rack you can see there's a Great River. Oh wait, no, it's a TC Electronic 1210, right? That's what's on the bottom. Anyway, here we go. We're going to power some stuff up. This TC 1210, you gotta set the mode back to number 1 every time you power it on and unbypass it. Great River MP2NV, really stable. Really stable. You never have to change the settings or worry. Phoenix Audio DRS-Q4 with EQ, and my cat. She's curious who I'm talking to, because I don't do this very often. And then the Mesa Boogie rectifier recording preamp. I just kick it off standby real quick. I don't wait. And above that is one of the switchers. See if I can pull you up. Switchblade GL, totally kick-ass unit. And then above that are RME interfaces. Interfaces are pretty much all you need. You can do it all without the switch if you're good. And then this is a Victoria Lux amplifier. Back of the Marshall, back of the Sovereign. Alright, back around the front. These are aftermarket preamps, and it's kind of like a distortion pedal, but it's got transformers and tubes. It can be a little bit more robust. It's basically the front end of an amplifier, and in that respect it's better than having a pedal. Very flexible. You know, you have a lot more control. You have infinite channels with MIDI. These Eventides are also MIDI controllable too. Okay, here's another switchblade. I want to diagram how, or maybe we can just do this. Try to open this file. Beat it, kitty. Here's two outputs that go to the second switchblade. Because the second switchblade handles almost all of the effects, what is going to happen on the second switchblade is a little bit more difficult to describe. I'm going to go into more detail. Because on the first switchblade, all we're doing is plugging guitars into preamps and preamps into power amps, and we create noise with that patch. So these are, you know, where I plug my, these are my favorites. It's pretty basic. There's nothing effect related except the MIDI is all controlled on this one. So this one sends out the MIDI bursts, everything. It'll send it to the Orville, it'll send it to the H8000, so that the Eventides respond to all of my patches. Whatever I build in this switchblade is really all you need to do to access and change anything. Although I have a second switchblade, this one it does the same thing almost all the time. Every now and then you'll have to change what goes to what, but for the most part you'll just leave these presets as like a standard preset, and it continues to go along no matter what you've got this one doing. You'll always have some effects. But here you can reduce the volume of some patches. Like, say you don't want that much digital delay screaming out at you with your rhythm guitar, but you do want some. You would patch it here, or for me, I would patch it here to where I can have that patch with reduced effects. But at the same time, the thing still connects to the sampler, and you can sample anything. One of my staunchest beliefs is that you should have a sampler at your availability at all times. So a lot of what I've done is to program my rig and my gear to sum down into the samplers. And the samplers can record whatever I'm doing at any time. It's very convenient. It's just like having a looper at the end of your pedal chain, but for me it's a little bit different the way I have to build it. I'm sure it's pretty complex with pedals too. The next little thing here is the RME Fireface ins and outs. And it's nice to have a interface with multiple ins and outs, because if you don't have enough ins and outs on this, you really depend on a situation where you need a secondary router. But if you have enough ins and outs on your interface, you can do a lot more and keep all your gear plugged straight into it. That's really not how I've done it though. I've got everything a little bit different as far as what comes out of this interface and what goes back into it. So here it shows I've got 4 channels coming from Switchblade GL2, and that's what this is right here. These are the outputs from that Switchblade. They go into the interface. And you know, you plug in whatever you want to these outputs. So I can basically take a preamp, send it out of the outputs of one Switchblade into the other, and then send that directly out to a channel, and then build a patch that way. This way you have a preamp only signal if you want. I don't do those anymore. I used to. But for all those preamps that have the simulators and they're supposed to sound like amplifiers, you can do this. Maybe like Axe-Fx. You could just patch it right in, send it right on through and right to the interface, or use whatever method they have. They have a USB connection. But if it were me and I was implementing it into my rig, I would probably just go with putting it into the I/O of my Switchblades and then use it as a punch button option. You wouldn't be my full-time choice. And that's kind of the beauty about using a Switchblade. It means you have way more than one option. You have as many options as you can plug into the things. So with 2 of them, I got a lot of flexibility. I still have available stuff. Like, you don't need both outputs of the MP1 or both outputs of the JMP. You can go with just one and say, this MP1 output is going to plug into 2 or 1 or 4. Or so this JMP1 output can go to 4 different amps, 5 different amps. You end up with a lot more flexibility having... I just have both of them just for purity, so that, you know what? The rectifier recording is a little bit unbalanced, and I think I've just used one output to power both sides of whatever I've decided to use. So yeah, I do use the rectifier recording. It's got a nice clean. It's got some cool distortions. It has a really wicked solo sound like John Sykes with a Les Paul. It's amazing. So, but, and like for the Rockman XPR, a lot of that thing's effects are stereo. So I want both outputs going to, connected to whatever. Now, this is a unique unit. Here's one you actually do use the sound of just a preamp through to the next Switchblade and out to the interface just as a preamp direct, because it has such a cool, unique sound. It's on various records. So back over here to the Fireface UFX. Inputs. These are from the Switchblade. And then it also has microphones on it. So these are different amplifiers. speakers. And these are the interface, or the microphone preamp, the two that I have back there, the 4 channels. Those are the returns. These are how the microphone signals get into the computer. In order to connect to my Eventide, I want these microphone signals. I want to use these microphone signals to plug into the Eventide. I really don't want anything to do with these preamp signals. So it's like, you don't want to send the preamp through the Eventide and then the Eventide through an amplifier and then try to record that. That would be counterproductive. The best way to get signal into your Eventide is to go through an amplifier, through a microphone, or through a speaker, microphone preamp, and then send that into the Eventide. So at this point, I've got it inside the computer, and I have to direct it out of the computer to get it into the Eventide, which is, happens in the blink of an eye, instantaneously. You don't even notice any latency. Where's the outputs? Outputs are right here. Here's the speaker. Oh, I have 2 outputs that go to effects. I do it all with 2 channels. You have to select which 2 channels are going out. It's pretty simple. You'll see when you get to the software. You have to select which 2 channels are going out. It comes out of the mixer. It comes out of the Fireface, goes back to the switchblade. And it comes into the switchblade right here, 11 and 12. So here's the TC1210 inputs and outputs. Here's the H8000s. I've got some X marking places where I don't have cables because my H8000 does not work in analog, or because I don't have it connected. I just need to get more patch cables in there, and I haven't done that because my Eventide H8000 is connected digitally. We'll get to that in a second. Here's the Orville inputs and outputs, and I do run that in analog, and for a reason, because the switchblade can control the levels of everything. And so whatever the sampler's got for output, I can kill the output, I can silence or back off and reduce the volume on the sampler. And I can also moderate how much signal is going into the effects. Whatever comes out of here, I can moderate it and use a pedal to control it, expression control. This way you can have saturation control on your Eventide, because man, sometimes they're really loud and you don't want them really loud, or sometimes they're not loud enough. So there's more about that coming up. And you really want control over what your sound is, and this is a great way. I have an expression controller on all the wet saturation level for the Eventide. So 2 signals come in here, they broadcast out. They come from the computer, they come into 11 and 12, and then they split. So you have 11 and 12 going to both sides of the TC. You have 11 and 12 that could go to H8000, but they're not connected that way. It's a digital. And both sides go into the Orvilles. So I say Orvilles because there's 2 of them, as you know. Eventide has 2 computers in 1 box. And you can of course use the box to control the routings, but this is a lot more programmable for me. I don't have to worry about setting my Eventides to do anything out of the ordinary. They're just program loaders. That's all they do. I have bypass control over the Eventides, but I don't have any like magical MIDI going on that makes them do zippy things. And then whatever comes out of these goes back, obviously, into the switchblade, and then the switchblade is connected to these returns. So Orvilles would be going back into the Fireface UFX right here, and the TC1210 comes back into the Fireface UC. So yeah, my UC doesn't really have anything in it. It's not really used. Still have a lot more stuff I could connect if I wanted to. But man, this is getting to be too much. I'm gonna go ahead and power some more stuff up. Alright, so there is everything, I'm trying to point to the screen. The Black Widow, the Marshall JMP, 80A MP1, Rockman XPR, really good preamps, and then the two Eventide, and then the power amp section with some heads. Oh man, we're going to need a fan in here, I know it. So here's a little explanation of the computer end of it, where your signals all go after the computer interfaces or the fire faces or whatever you've got. You don't have to go for foreign made, but these RME are known to work real good for PC based. And I gotta be honest, they're pretty fast, and whoever said that was right. Here's the PC environment. I gotta go and get it off the headphones right now. Let's turn off the headphones. Unmute the main channel and mute the headphones. This might be loud, so let me turn it down. So what it's doing is playing back files that I've already recorded. I'm going to clean them out right now, so we don't have to worry about my pre-recorded nonsense. Reset some values here. This is basically how I set my mixer. It's been working real good for me. The computer's mixer this isn't the computer's mixer. The RME mixer is over here on the right side, and this is the RME mixer. This is what you see when if you don't load any software. This is the digital audio workstation, FL Studio, and this is the mixer for the fire faces. And the way this works is all of those speakers that have a microphone out there with a microphone preamp on the other side, they have a signal that comes into the interface. And all of those signals show up here on your mixer. You don't even have to, you can't really adjust the levels of those signals, but you can do things like add limiters. This is noise gates. So every one of these mixers that has a D has a noise gate on it. And then there's also EQs. You can add an EQ to every line that comes into the interface. And I have EQs on 3 of them. I have the Sovereign has an EQ, the Alnico Blue and the PV has an EQ, and the Heritage Greenback has an EQ. Sometimes you try to avoid having multiple EQs, and sometimes you just throw the whole book at it, trying to get your signal to sound better. So after it goes into here, your software has access to this. Every one of these channels can be customized. It could be whatever you want it to be. And when you start a new file, it won't have any of this in there. So you end up having to build your own startup files that have your channels already pre-built. On this one, on my mixer, the blue ones are the incoming channels. And the way they route is set up here, and you can activate and record these channels by just hitting that little red dot, and it sets it to record. And once you go to the record mode and you press play, it's going to start recording your audio. You don't have to arm those channels and record the incoming channels. This is also where you would add plugins and things like EQs. So on this mixer, every one of these channels has a list of plugins, and I'm not using any plugins. And this little indicator here indicates plugin active. On the H8000, this is the effects channel. I do have something. I have a Fruity compressor, which boosts the volume level of the signal, because I I gotta be honest, digital is not as loud as analog. Analog, you could really blast it. Digital seems to have very defined limits of what you can pump into it and what it's going to give back. And so the way I'm connected to my H8000 is using the digital outputs. And I've described that. It doesn't really show up in your switchblade because it's plugged directly into the unit. And the only way the switchblade is connected to it is via MIDI. So I can MIDI blast it with program change instructions using my MIDI controller. But hey, I'll show you that, by the way. It's right down here. That's it. Program 1, that's the Victorolux. Program 2, that's the clean mode of the Mesa Boogie. Rectifier recording preamp as a clean. So this is in case the Victorolux ever goes down, which it has. You need something. 3 is the Marshall JMP 50 watt. It's a new head I just wired into this system. And in order to do that, I needed to have a speaker for it. And so I went and I borrowed my Eminence Texas Heat because I think it sounds the best with that Marshall. I think it sounds better than the Celestion stuff I have. I don't have enough wattage. I mean, because the thing is like wide open. It's always going to be hammer and a speaker. It's the loudest amp I have set up. It's loud out there. So then this is the Victoria Sovereign. And then this is the Marshall JMP. I mean, no. 5 is the Black Widow MGP preamp from Black Widow. So that preamp has 3 channels, and you can set it up for whatever you want. And I set it up for a clean Fender, like a Marshall, and then like a Mesa Boogie. So it has some really good sounds. I love it. 10 is the ADA MP1. This is the lead sound for doing the lead screaming stuff. 9 is the rectifier recording solo mode, where if you want to sound like John Sykes with your neck pickup, man, that's the way to do it. Let's see, 8 is the Marshall, it's the Black Widow preamp set up going into the Mesa Boogie power amp. So how do I describe that? It's kind of like an old Fender circuit recreation where you would have a 6L6 power section with a pretty badass front end. So this is kind of like my Fender setup. 7 is what? 7 is the same preamp, but it goes into the PV amp and gives you the blue speaker. So here it's kind of like creating a oh, it also has chorus on it. So it's kind of like creating I use it for my Van Halen Brown sounds with chorus. I don't know if you know what I'm talking about. 6 is just the Victorolux with chorus. So if you were doing, it's like having a clean amp with a chorus pedal. So if you were doing like the Bryan Adams, that's I use 6. Then you go up a bank, and then these are the rhythm guitar section. I don't know what you call it, rhythm guitar. It's distortion. This is like George Lynch and Warren DeMartini stuff. I put it all in 11 through 20. So 11 is the Marshall. 11 through 15 is the Marshall power amp. And 16 through 20 is the Mesa power amp. It's real simple. And then this is the ADA MP1, the Marshall JMP, which is the preamp, the JMP1. And then this is the Mesa Boogie rectifier recording. And then this is the Rockman XPR, and this is the Black Widow MGP1A. So yeah, it's real simple. You've got the ADA MP1 through the Mesa or the Marshall. So here's Marshall, Mesa. Here's the JMP1 through Marshall and Mesa. And it's instant. It'll load and change patches as fast as you can click them. It doesn't have any load time because they're already all preset and ready to go. Alright. That's what fascinates me about the MIDI, is it's so reliable. It's so instantaneous. It's idiot proof. Like anybody can operate this guitar rig. It's not hard. All of those are going to activate different speakers, and when a speaker and a microphone start coming in with signal, it comes in here, and then you can do whatever you want with it. You have options. The way I get these signals out of here and into the Eventide is basically set up right here. you have all of the speakers that come in. Like here's an incoming speaker. That's the Texas Heat, the red, which is Celestion redback, Vintage 30, greenback, Alnico blue, greenback, Alnico gold, Victoria, Victorolux. These speakers that come in have an output down on the bottom. And so what you're telling your channel to do is to come in and go right back out. You can put plugins on them if you want, but you can see here there's no plugins on any of my channels. I try to get them and keep them clean to where there's nothing on them. Like this filter is deactivated. So there's really nothing on any of my channels, but at the same time they all sub-route. Here's the sub-routing. So many different ways you can route. They sub-route into a mixer channel, which does have an EQ on it. These are where I put my EQs. So one EQ covers all these speakers. I did that because I really want to retain the original sound of what the speaker sounds like. I don't want to change every speaker because you end up making every speaker sound the same. You just want to be able to hear the difference between a blue and a gold, and it's real simple. When some of them, they don't even have any EQs on them. So they tend to sound unique and like themselves. The Victoria Victorolux doesn't need to go through any EQ, so I have it routed to skip past the EQ section and go and start getting to go straight out. So when you activate the recording of the Victoria Victorolux and you want some effects, you would activate the Eventide. So how does that work? How does it go through the Eventide? Here it has an output 9 and 10. And back over on the mixer, when you play through that channel, it's going to go out of analog 3 and 4. That's my outputs that I'm using to get back to the switchblade. And there's where you connect to the Eventide. The reason is you just want to be able to control the levels with your foot switch. Again, here it is. Those two pedals are what control the levels that go in and out of the Eventide. It also has a mode. When you go into mode, you can turn all of your Eventides off. Now there's 4 Eventides bypassed. And to be honest with you, I keep the H8000 bypassed most of the time. And just run one Eventide and one sampler. That's pretty much all you need. I mean, you can do all kinds of killer shit, but one Eventide is pretty storming. You can do, it sounds amazing. So yeah, I use only one channel to go out, and I have them all delineated here though. Like every one of them has a unique output value. And that doesn't mean they go out that channel. That just takes it to the software section over on the mixer. I'll bring this mixer over so you can see better. Yeah, so when you play, when you output a signal on your mixer out, it's going to come into this software mixer section. So there's 3 sections on this RME mixer page. Here's the hardware input. That's what comes in, and you can't adjust the levels here. It just has to be adjusted like on the preamp. And you can adjust the preamp, so I remember I said that this has 4 preamps in it, and those are right here. Like this little thing here is going to show you. It's set at 29. This one's set at 27, 26, and 30. The next one won't have a level because this is just a channel in. This comes from the DRS Q4, and this comes from the Great River. And then these are the Eventide returns. This is where the Eventide signal comes in. So I've got it set up to where your software has a different channel, and then when you go to the output, this is the hardware output. Now these you can adjust the levels. Here's where you would adjust how much signal is going out of the interface to your Eventide or whatever. I've got mine connected to the switchblade. So it's going to blast the switchblade with whatever's playing through the computer, and it all of the computer channels go out this one output. So this is going to be dry audio. It's not going to have any effects on it. unless you want it. The way that you connect the Orville output to the sampler, like so you have the effects of the Orville, you want those to go into the sampler so your sampler can have the effect as well. You can sample the effect. That's all set up inside of the Switchblade. So what's happening here on this output is all your channels are going out of the interface and they're headed towards an eventide. That's the intent. You can plug them directly into the eventide by setting up, like this could 5 and 6 would be the other half of the H8000, 7 and 8 AES. Like you could set up, if you had enough outputs, which I don't, you can connect all these eventides with analog. But I don't have enough outputs, so I ended up sending it to the switch, and the switch has 16 I/O, which is nice. So I guess if it were me, what I would do is have even a small interface like the Fireface UC is fine. I would have the microphone preamps on that. I would use them, and I would put microphones in front of speakers, and I would take that signal that comes from the microphone. It would come in through your computer. It would come into your software. You would have to locate the channel input and say it was right here, analog 8 or whatever it was. You would have to send that back out of the interface and send it to your eventide directly. You could plug right from the interface to the eventide. And then the eventide would have a signal it generates, and it would come back, and that eventide would have an input right here. So here's my eventide digital input. Here's my eventide analog input. Analog 3 and 4. The other half of the Orville is right here, analog 1 and 2. There's the sampler, and this is the H8000 sampler as well. So there's two samplers that are in use here. This way you can take the output of one sampler and connect it to the other, re-record something that's already sampled and sample over the top of it. You kind of build loops that way. Alright, just to review, when you have a microphone on a speaker, that signal is going to come into your interface. That interface signal is going to need to be recorded in your software. So your software has to be trained on that input. In order to do that, you would go to the input on a mixer channel, and you would select it as analog 1 and 2 input. Now if you look at this, you can see all of my different options of channels coming in. There's quite a few. You can select any one that you want for each thing, and then you have to label it. So I've done this, and the blue channels are labeled channels that come in. This is the Orville H8000. This is the chorus. So when you want to record the chorus, it's recorded separately and it tracks it separately. And if you want to adjust the mix later on, you'll have a separate track with just the chorus effect. And this is where I track everything separately. You can record a Marshall but have separate effects and saturate and dry to your, until you're satisfied. So these are the three, and then there's the two Marshalls. Here's a submix channel. The submix channel has the result of both left and right. So you can see I've got them hard and panned. And then submix channel is going to have both of them. Like, you don't have to create two different files. And I don't. I create a submix file. If I was going to record the Mesa Boogie amplifier, I'm going to use the submix. And it's going to have a filter on it, an EQ. I'm going to bring it over here and show you. This is what I use for an EQ on my high gain guitars. That's what it looks like. I almost always have the bottom end boosted, not much happening in the middle, and then the high end rolled off. For most of my stuff, that's what it's going to look like. There's really not a lot of EQ. I like to sound like the amplifier. I don't want to sound like something else. I want to sound like what a Mesa Boogie sounds like with a vintage 30. I want to hear that sound, and I want to capture that and retain it. And that's what I find that when you go through compression, when you compress things and record and use a computer and a stupid interface instead of using tape, that it hears way more top-end information than is possibly useful. And if you want your guitars to be like distortion with scream, feedback, and things like that, you're going to want the amplifier to be set with some high frequency in it. If you take all the high frequency out of the amplifier, then the amplifier doesn't really behave the same way. So my amplifiers tend to be set with a lot of high frequencies, and they behave like nasty screamers. But that's the intended goal of my sound. I want it to be aggressive and shreddy and have detail in the top end. So the amplifiers are set with plenty of that. But when you get into the interface and when you get into the computer, there's where you're deciding, well, it's got to fit playback on. It's got to fit the playback on like earbuds. It's got to sound good on headphones. It's got to sound good on little tiny speakers. And here's where the low end is always gone, and the high end is really piercing. So here's where the roll-off comes in. And it's one simple setting. I'm on 10.1K roll-off. That's what that is, 10.1. I mean, I've done as low as 6K. Some channels are different. I notice on my the EQ here that there's some roll-offs that are pretty low value. Here, this one's set at 3K. I mean, think about that. This one's set at 6.6. This one's set at 6.2. 3K on my Sovereign. So if I wanted to record something and I wanted to record the Mesa amplifier, and I did come here and I triggered left and right channels separately, there's no EQ on them. And if I record them, there's not going to be an EQ on them. The track I record is going to have no EQ. And then I can route it from there. I can route the track into an EQ, or I can just come over here and put it in the mix, assign it to a channel. It would have no EQ. So, I mean, I like to record the final sound, and so I'll record the summed mix channel instead. And when I'm recording the lead guitar, I'm typically not recording the blue speaker and the gold separately. I record the summed channel. And if I'm kicking around and picking different presets on the floorboard, you really don't want to record all these channels. All you have to do is record these two here, which is the wet and dry. So all of the effects are going to sub-route. Here's the effects. They sub-route into the wet and dry. Or into the wet, obviously. Duh. And then here's the other side of those. These are the samplers. They also route into the wet. And then the microphones are going to route into the dry. So let's take a look. That one's routed into the dry. That's routed into dry. Here's the submix routed into dry. Here's another submix routed into dry. And I think the Lux goes straight into dry. Let's see what the Fishman triple play. Triple play skips it all. Omnisphere skips it all. So these are the synths. Anyways, I could sub-route those. I could switch these just like this. Here's how you do that. You would click here, and it creates a connection. And turn this one off. And then let's go to the Fishman triple play. We'll click here on the dry, and turn this one off. Alright, so now the Fishman triple play and the Omnisphere will go to the dry. So here, if you want to record now, you can kick around and pick all the different amps that you want for presets while it's recording, and switch. Use your switcher and switch different amps and get totally different mic lines and record all at once, which is really, really nice. That's what I've been doing lately. Since I figured out how to use this router, I mean, it took me a while to understand the software and to understand what's happening. So I feel kind of good being able to help people or show someone else that your microphone signals come in to your computer, and then you know, you could do a lot from there. You can control a lot of different routing options, and this is also very handy for recording. You want to record your guitar with effects and have everything tracked separately and be able to mix them then this is awesome. This is the way to go. So I'm going to go back to that. Hang on a second. I'm going to load a file. Let's load a song. This is Blurp, the one I just did. These are the tracks when I record audio. You can see here I've recorded the wet and dry. And here I've got some channels turned off. I've got the wet channels turned off. The reason I did that is because I reran the recording out to the Eventide. Like, you could take these recordings, now that they're tracked, and run them right back out to effects. Like I heard some pops and clicks on the recording and I wasn't happy. It was in the effects track. So sometimes that happens when you're recording multiple channels. Is you'll get artifacts in the conversion of audio analog signal into digital. It'll sometimes pop and click, and it has to do with latency and overloading the buffer. It's not constant for me. It depends on whether I'm trying to film HD video with the computer at the same time. That tends to tax the computer additionally. It tends to add more pops and clicks. Right now I'm using my camera. It's just that the footage that comes off the computer is so damn good. I try to use its camera whenever possible these days. Okay, now this is going to be a multi-monitor view. I'm going to try to get you over to the layout where this is where you lay your tracks out, and there's some shortcuts on the keyboard. So here's the song. These are the different parts. Like, I recorded, let's solo it. It's simple. Just dry guitar. Turn you over towards the mixer. Okay, so you can see what's happening is, a few of these light up and it shows you the levels of the signal that's going through. What's happening is I have that file assigned to mixer channel number 5. And so mixer channel 5 is going to be lighting up, and then it routes down through a series of mixers where this is kind of like the final mixing section of your song, and you can see there's some levels adjusted here. What I've done is I've taken the drums and backed them off, and I've taken the overall mix and lowered it down because this one is pretty cranked. And when I got to this point, it started passing the loudness penalty. It'll tell you if it's going to dock you and reduce your volume for you. It'll rebuild your song or rebuild your audio a little bit. It'll just lower the volumes, which I flip and hate because I spend so much time adjusting how much low frequencies and how much high frequencies are in the effects and in the mix in general, that I don't want anybody readjusting any levels whatsoever. So I test everything ahead of time. To me, this guarantees that they're not going to change your song when they recompress it on their end. But what you can do is you can take just that dry track, and you could rerun it using an output, and it'll take the song and play it into the Eventide, and that'll add effects. You can change your effects. You can revise and improve your effects. Like, for example, you can put 4 different Eventide effects on a track if you want. And if you get some artifacts in your effects, you can rerun the song out and get the effects to record over again. And that's what I've done on this one. You can see over here on the mixer, let's see, so there'll be some unused channels here. 24, 25, and 26 wet. Where are they? Wet, 24, 25, and 26. So here's what's not playing. This channel here is not part of my mix because I've taken it out and rebuilt it, and it came in as Orville 37. So they look similar, but one of them's not used. It's a rerun of the audio. If you look here, I did a couple of edit points where I've removed some audio, and I've removed the audio. This is the lead guitar track. Even when sometimes between phrases, every little noise that your guitar makes will get recorded, and you'll want to cut some of that crap out of there. And so I did a couple of cleanup points, and then I reran it out to the Eventide. And the Eventide then, I mean, it has this subtle tail right here. You see the difference? This has a nice tail that trails off. I can zoom in. How about that? Okay, so here's the lead guitar track on the top. Here's the unused effects that I wasn't happy with. And here's the new track. So what I wasn't happy with was the noise between phrases. I was making any motion or bump of the guitar will create like a bong. And if I'm not happy with it, I'll cut that out of the dry audio. So here's the dry audio, just at that point. Silence. Here's it. We'll do the next one. Pretty boring without any effects. So yeah, I ended up making these edits, and then I reran it through the Eventide to get here's the next one. So here you end up like you're in a work environment where you're storing your audio, you're making minor edits to kind of clean up noises that shouldn't be there. This is another way you'll just put two different parts together. I changed guitars. I ended up using a different guitar, and so I recorded up to here. I switched guitars, and I kept recording. And so there's two different recordings, or three actually, right here. And you take that one single result and you play it through the Eventide for one single effects file, and that's what I'm using on that song, is the kind of the improved or cleaned, scrubbed version. Here you can activate and deactivate different tracks. Here's the master output. Like, I review the song just visually. I look at the song's wave file. They kind of say you're not supposed to do this, but I look for the overall strength of the file. I run it through the loudness penalty website loudness check, and then you just make sure that that nothing's you'll have a point where sometimes something is really loud, and you may want to edit. It'll show you where to edit, or you can determine what the loudness point of your song is and things like that. So that's what this file here is. That's the final output file that I ended up bringing that file into the video editing software, and this is what I use. This is the final output of the song, and then you'll bring that into the video editing and build your video using that audio file. So just to summarize, when you have an audio file and it's playing on a mixer track, you can set that mixer track output to whatever you want, and here if I set it to 3 and 4 out, it's going to play out into the effects units. And there's how you would rerun an audio file and re-record the effects that come from it. You just have to remember to press and switch that channel back to none when you're done, because it'll continue to play out to effects if you let it. Stems that are recorded, they get assigned different mixer tracks. You would assign your recorded audio to a mixer channel, and then on that mixer channel you can continue to add effects, or you can use software effects. But if you have an Eventide, you would just choose the output that goes to that your device, and it'll send audio straight to your effects, which will come back on the effects return channel. So here's my return of those effects. I would record this channel while I played the song, just the one channel, and it would add new effects. Recap on the mixer for your interface. Your interface channels are all going to come in, and you really can't adjust the levels here. You have to adjust the levels prior to them getting to this point. This is just going to monitor when something's close to clip. I think it sounds better when you fill up the signal range, when you have a nice strong full signal at this point. After this, it's going to go into the computer. It's into the software, and then the software is going to be over here. When it plays back, the channel is going to show right here. So you'll have it showing up on the input of how strong it is, and then in the software, if you adjust the levels, it'll have a playback value. It'll show you how strong of a level are you actually recording. It'll show right here. It'll also show in your software, but it'll also show right here. And the nice thing about that is that when you go to your output, you select an output and then you adjust how hot you want each one to be. Now, like say I'm doing my clean guitar, I'm using a Victorolux, I want some really nice effects on it. Those channels are going to be right here, the green and the lux, and if I want to have louder volume on my effects, I would send more signal to them by boosting these up. That would have a larger value going out the output of the Fireface. That would send a hotter signal to the Eventides. Eventides would be working with more volume. And the front panel of an Eventide will show you how much it's got going through it. And when the Eventide's done with that signal, it'll come back into your interface and it'll have a strength shown here. The digital side is also shown here. That's my, this is the Fireface UC, which has 2 digital inputs. It's a very nice little interface for its digital. It's a very nice interface, period. You know, microphone preamps, people are kind of picky about those, and I'm one of them. Maybe it's not the best for the mic preamps, but it does have enough channels. It does have 2 digital channels, so anything coming from the H8000 is going to show up here, and it'll have a level and a strength, so it's viewable. On this interface, it's called this SPDIF. You can see I've got it selected, and it shows the output at 0. So anything that I want to send out to the H8000, I just have to select the channel. And here, that's the sampler, and this is the effects. So you can see the different mixers change values here. So this sends to the sampler, and this sends to the effects. They return right here as SPDIF and this next digital, I can't even remember, ADAT. So for me on the RME side, I have 2 different interfaces, and they're both selectable right here. They both work within this one application. I can imagine you could run more than just the 2, but you know, each has a USB output and connects to the computer, and I don't have unlimited USB ports, and I'm kind of picky about keeping my USB port simple because I don't want to overload the computer trying to figure out where all this with all this data. So it's all my audio is basically done elsewhere, and the computer doesn't spend any time adding effects or using plugins. None of that stuff is good for your computer, in my opinion. It's just going to tax the system and give you more artifacts. So for an artifact-free experience, this is the way I do it. Here's a quick run through with Adobe Premiere. I mean, you know, you've got that audio file that you just spent time building, and then you've got the video files, which are separate. And I'm going to open a project that I've already done. Let's just open that last one I did. Blurb. It's really simple. There's not much to this one. But I pile all the files, like there's 3 video files for it, and then the audio file. I pile them all in one folder, just to makes it simple here, browsing around. And you drag them in one at a time into this little editor right here, on this timeline. So here's the whole file, the whole video, and let's press play. So you have your level indicator right here showing that was going up to -6 at that point, -6 dB. I do speak in peaks most of the time. I know everyone else has some other standard that they use. I'm no expert, but the highest value I see here is kind of what I call where my levels are. It was real simple. I mean, since that background loop is repeated, I mean, I just repeated the video. So here it is, over and over. I copy paste, man. Control V. You just have to get your in and out points correct, and you can duplicate it all the way down the line. And I had to double check. I had to bump some things back into synchronization, so where at the end of the video it's still in sync. So, but when the lead guitar comes in, you can see there's another video file for that. I played it differently, recorded it separately, and then this is that video file. And then I made this video in 3 cuts, 3 takes or whatever. The second part is where I switched guitars, and I wasn't happy with the end, so I had to re-record a part. And here you see the re-recording right there. Yeah, I do work on 3 different screens. The Surface Pro is not the most powerful computer, and it's got a little tiny screen. So these 2 additional screens is where I do most of the work. I try not to really do anything on the little screen. I can't see that well. And that's the little light that I use right there. That it shines a light on the front of the guitar and has a spotlight in the middle, and I shine that on the headstock because I find that the headstock's hard to illuminate, so there's a spotlight that hits the headstock. It's just a gimmick. So another thing about these videos that I put up on YouTube, you spend a lot of time making that audio file. That's the audio file on the bottom. You spend a lot of time making the audio file, and you want it to sound good. Right here it's a waveform. It's the original waveform, so it's not even compressed, it's uncompressed. It sounds great, but this file, this program's going to have to recompress that audio. And a couple of things about YouTube videos. If you want high quality audio, you're probably going to have to try to stay uncompressed as long as you can, and work everything uncompressed and bring it into your video editor uncompressed. But here's where it's going to compress it. It's going to build an MPEG file, or an AVI file, or whatever it is you build. It's going to compress it. It's going to compress your audio. So you're going to want to check your settings on the. Here's where you want your file preferences set correctly when you do an export. Like, go to export. You know, I have tried to do 1080 video and whatever. It doesn't play back on a streaming service like YouTube. It's way too much data. You've probably seen videos that won't play properly. It's because they are too large and their frame rate is too high. So what I've gone with is this format is called H.264. It's one of the more popular ones that's out right now. And then, let's see. It's going to be an MP4 file when it comes out, when it finishes. It shows the output details here. Oh, my eyes are so bad. that it's going to do a 720 video. It's not even doing 1080. I output 720 size videos. And where's the audio video settings here? I really don't ever touch this stuff. I just leave it. Here's bitrate settings, blah, 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 blah. Bit rates. So here's audio. AAC format. Let's go down a little bit. Audio codec, AAC, sample rate 48,000. High quality. Max bit rate, 320 bit rate. Let's see. Yeah. I'm surprised it doesn't say VBR. So in my opinion, that you would be better off rendering video out at 720 and trying to have the highest quality audio that you can attach to it. And this way, when YouTube gets it, YouTube's going to do as little as possible to your audio. So the last thing I want to talk about is the power that it takes to run multiple amplifiers is sometimes really high. When building something like this, you'll want to track how much amperage each device uses, and this will let you know how much you can stack on a circuit. A 7 amp amplifier like the Marshall, it can't really go with other devices because powering off the device sometimes allows power to surge to the other devices. And I've had problems with Orville. I've had problems with quite a few devices where they needed to be serviced because the power requirements weren't stable. And it also generates a lot of heat, and so I have a lot of fans that I use to circulate air in the room. Keep the amplifiers and the effects at a reasonable temperature. So with all the fans running, the place cooled off, you end up with a pretty nice room to hang out and build your audio into really nice audio files and then send them out via video. Just a quick run through of what these patches sound like through the camera mic. Victorlux. Here's 1210 chorus. This little pick, these purple .60s. Let's see what I got here. Snarling Dogs purples. They say something on there. 12.60s. Getting blind in my old age. These are nice and soft. To me, it keeps your guitar in tune. So with the chorus, it sounds weird all the time anyway. Here's a second clean. This is the blue with the rectifier recording. It's coming out of one speaker. Let me adjust it. Two speakers there. So that's the MGP preamp on its clean channel going into the PD blue. It gets a 1210 chorus. It also has Eventide effects for that preset. Let's see what else we got. So that Fender amplifier creation. Marshall, the head. Victoria Sovereign up on the top. That's one with 3K roll-off. So, Black Widow on its Marshall channel, going through the Marshall. 80A MP1. Here's the MP1. Oh wait, this is the rectifier recording with Mesa Boogie. It's in solo mode. Some distortion. Start with the Marshall and the MP1. And then the JMP1. The rectifier recording through the Marshall. Rockman XPR through the Marshall. Black Widow MGP through the Marshall. Time to go 6L6, go to the Mesa. JMP1. This is two dual rectifiers. It's using the rectifier recording preamp and the T100 in modern mode. So it's kind of like the diode mode of dual rectifier. It's the Rockman XPR, and the last one's the Black Widow with the 6L6. So those are the basic sounds. Those are the top 20s. It's mostly what I use. Oh wait, go to 21. Rockman XPR with no amplifier.